I am Leon Mercer, 74, and somehow the sharpest cuts in my life came from people who share my last name. After 42 years riding routes and supervising carriers for the Postal Service, I thought I'd earned a quiet morning and the right to decide where my coffee cup lives. 2 weeks after we buried Lorraine, my children scheduled a family meeting without asking me first. They came with stylized sympathy and a plan that smelled like fresh paint over rotten wood. Before we go any further, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had to set a boundary the folks you love didn't like, hit that like button so this story finds someone who needs it. I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, where you learn to read a room the way you learn to read a storm cloud. In our orange brick 3-bedroom, Lorraine's hydrangeas ringed the porch and a small brass wind chime sang any time a neighbor stopped by. That house was a fortress because we made it one, or so I believed. At 6 a.m., my son Marcus called. Same clip tone he used at 16 when he wanted gas money, upgraded to corporate polish. "Dad, good news," he said. "We found a buyer. This place is too much for you alone." I let the silence breathe. He filled it like always. "Paige ran the numbers," he added, meaning his wife. "Efficient, immaculate, and as gentle as a stapler. We can finish a basement suite at our place. Separate entrance. You'll love it." I set my mug down. The coffee had gone cold. "Marcus," I said, "you've been planning this a while. That's called being responsible." He paused, and I could hear him lean into a mirror to check the angle of his righteousness. "We can't wait until something happens to you." There it was, until something happens to you. "Appreciate the concern," I said. "I'll think on it." He tried to keep talking. I ended the call. Lorraine always said, "Don't argue with a train, step off the tracks." An hour later, Paige arrived, cutting her silver SUV into my driveway like a surgeon's scalpel. She walked in without knocking, a leather portfolio under her arm, and a smile that forgot to involve her eyes. "Leon," she said, "I know Marcus can be big picture. Let's ground this in solutions." She spread pages across my yellow kitchen table, floor plans shaded in cheerful teal, financial projections typed in a font that made condescension look modern, a private suite in their basement, kitchenette, bath, a door that might as well lock from the outside. "You'd have complete privacy," she said, tapping the pastel prison. "And we'd handle the tough stuff, bills, appointments. It's generous." Generous stung like a scraped knee. "And about the mortgage," she added softly. "No shame if you've fallen behind. We can help." I looked at Paige, white blouse, white smile, white comfort with other people's business, and remembered every meeting where someone talked around me to get past me. People forget the post office teaches patience. It also teaches inventory. What's in every box? What's missing? I didn't argue. I didn't persuade. I just watched her finish the pitch and thanked her for presenting. That night, I opened Lorraine's blue folder. She'd labeled it in her tidy hand, Carolina. Inside, a card for Raven Hollow Community Land Trust, contact for attorney Marisol Green in Raleigh, and a note in Lorraine's voice even on paper. "If they ever try to cut you small, make yourself bigger. Call Marisol." So I called. "Mr. Mercer," Marisol said, voice like a cedar beam. "Lorraine briefed me while she still had strength. I've got you." I sat with my phone at the same kitchen table where Paige had diagrammed my future. It was time to tell the truth to the only person in this family who hadn't tried to manage me. Nia, 19, quick mind like her grandmother, soft heart like her too. On the second ring, she answered, out of breath the way you are when you run toward the sound of what matters. "Granddad, Mom said you all had some big talk. You okay?" "We did," I said. "I'm fine. I need to ask you something, and I'd like it straight." She went quiet in the way grown folks do when they decide to show you respect. "For the last 2 years," I said, "I've been sending you $500 a month for school. You getting that?" Silence. Not the comfortable kind. "I get deposits," she said, "but Mom and Marcus said that was them. Working extra, sacrifices." I closed my eyes and saw Lorraine's handwriting again. "If they cut you small..." "Nia, that money is from me," I said. "Every penny." The line went thin and tight. When she spoke again, it sounded like she'd put a stone under her words to keep them from blowing away. "I wrote them thank you notes," she whispered. "Told my friends my parents were heroes. Felt guilty for buying a sandwich on a long study day. You don't owe guilt for my help, I said. You owe honesty to yourself. She was quiet a long time. Then a new note entered her voice, lower, steadier. That's why they want your house, she said. They've been living off a story, and if you sell, they can keep telling it. Partly, I said. Partly it's fear dressed up as responsible. Granddad, she said, I'm coming home this weekend. You don't have to. I do. They taught me to confuse control with care. I'd like to hand that homework back. After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't since the funeral, relief with a spine in it. Nia wasn't just hurt by the lie. She was offended by being made to carry it. The phone rang again. Tasha, my daughter. Daddy, she said, Nia's upset. What did you tell her? The truth, I said, about who's been paying her way. I wanted to handle it inside the family. You involved her the day you took credit for money that wasn't yours, I said, gentler than my words. Child, pride's not a tether you wrap around someone else's throat. Tasha exhaled. We liked how it felt, she said, words rough with honesty. Being seen as the ones who could. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was a door. Doors matter. On Monday, at exactly 7:20 a.m., a white moving truck rumbled into Maple Crest, Marcus and Paige's delightfully covenanted neighborhood. I'd asked Caleb Nguyen, crew chief with 4 arms like bridge cables and a memory for instructions, for that exact time. Neighbors would be making smoothies. Dogs would be mid-walk. Spectacle thrives on routine. Double-check the address, Caleb had said when I hired him. Triple-check, I said, and get signatures. The truck parked under crepe myrtles trimmed into submission. Mrs. Ellison stepped onto her porch in a robe the color of old wine and didn't pretend not to watch. Across the street, the Whitakers' blinds formed a surveillance slit. Their teenage boy, Bryce, held his phone at the angle of viral hope. Box by box, Caleb's crew unloaded my handwriting. Marcus Mercer, personal, from Leon Mercer. High school trophies, a letter jacket still trussed in dry cleaner plastic. A guitar Marcus never learned to tune. 3 boxes of college gear that never made it to a dorm. Then Paige's wedding china, never used because the risk of a chip scared her more than the risk of becoming the kind of person who never uses anything beautiful. Caleb rang the bell. Marcus answered in a robe, hair doing what truth does to people. It messed him up. A note was taped to each box. Marcus and Paige. These items have been in my house for 20+ years. As you're eager to manage property, begin with your own. Please acknowledge receipt. Leon. Not spite. Accounting. Neighbors multiplied. Dogs forgot to tug leashes. Bryce angled for the shot where somebody cries. Paige appeared in designer pajamas, eyes wide, calculating the social math in real time. Father-in-law returns our things. We look dependent. Our brand suffers. Marcus signed. He had to. When the truck pulled away, 6 households had found reasons to be outside. That's Maple Crest. HOA-approved curiosity. My phone rang as I eased my car away from a side street. What did you think that stunt accomplished? Marcus shot through the speaker. Property management, I said, since you're so eager to manage mine. You humiliated us. I returned your property to your address, I said. Humiliation requires an audience and a guilty conscience. Looks like you supplied both. Paige grabbed the phone. People will think we used you. Did you? She said nothing. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let a person listen to their own silence. This changes. Nothing, Marcus said, grabbing back the line. Then you'll love the next part, I said, and ended the call. 40 minutes later, their cars, a graphite BMW and a Pearl SUV, skidded into my driveway. Marcus used the spare key he'd never returned, shouldered past the front door like this was a raid. What game is this? He shouted. Paige took the chair at my kitchen table and let tears cut black tracks through her mascara. Mrs. Ellison texted, she said. She asked if we were having financial problems. Are you? I asked. Calm isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. That's not the point, Marcus snapped. His palm hit the table hard enough to make Lorraine's old mug jump. You made us look like freeloaders. I made you look like recipients of your own belongings, I said. Sit down. He did. So did Paige. Sometimes a command lands because it's the only solid thing in the room. I pulled out Lorraine's folder and slid a deed across the table. Your mother was smarter than we treated her, I said. Smarter than grief made you. She saw this day coming, and she prepared. I slid the deed across the table. Marcus read like he was sprinting. Paige read like she was combing for loopholes. "It's not a deed to you," I said. "It's a deed from me." The top line wore Lorraine's careful signature. The body wore language that did not care if Marcus liked it. Raven Hollow Community Land Trust, 99-year ground lease, Mercer Homestead. "You put the house in a trust?" Marcus asked, voice rising on the last word, like it wanted to jump out of his throat. "Lorraine did," I said, 6 months before the chemo got loud. The front door opened without a knock. Attorney Marisol Green stepped in like she'd been here before, which she had. Navy suit and summer fabric, shoes that meant business without apologizing for comfort. "Mr. Mercer asked me to stop by," she said, setting a slim folder on the table. "I'm counsel of record for the trust. Let me help translate." Paige folded her arms. "We checked records." "You checked the old parcel," Marisol said, polite and pointed. "Your mother-in-law recorded a subdivision plat and a quitclaim the week before Thanksgiving. Different book, different page. Quiet people can still be clever. She laid out the rules like a teacher who loved clarity. Community Land Trust means the land belongs to the trust forever. The house sits on that land under a ground lease. Your father retains lifetime occupancy. His name, not anyone else's. He can't sell it. He can't take a loan against it. Neither can you. That's the point." Marcus blinked. "So, we get nothing." Marisol didn't flinch. "You get a living father. You get a family property that isn't a bargaining chip. You get to decide whether you want a relationship not based on asset extraction." Paige's chin lifted. "What about repairs? Taxes? Who pays for what?" "Good question," Marisol said. "Lease spells it out. The trust handles land taxes. The house responsibilities are split. Routine maintenance is Leon's. Structural emergencies come from a stewardship reserve Lorraine funded." She was practical like that. I slid another paper across. A doctor's letter, clean and formal. "Since you brought up competence last time," I said, "I visited Dr. Patel for a full evaluation. Green light. I may misplace the TV remote, but not my rights." Marcus stared at the letter like it had personally insulted him. "And this," Marisol added, tapping a clause with a neat red nail, "is the no coercion provision. If anyone, family included, pressures Leon to vacate, to assign his rights, or to move under duress, they lose visitation privileges and access to the property for 5 years. On a second violation, permanently. Enforcement is by injunction. I have the motion templates ready." Paige's voice went small. "That's extreme." "Lorraine watched you all measure this house in square feet instead of memories," I said. "She made a fence. The kind that keeps wolves out and grandchildren in." Marcus tried one last procedural hope. "This can be contested." "Sure," Marisol said. "In open court, on public record. I look forward to explaining your texts about maximizing equity and fast-tracking conservatorship. Discovery gets thorough." Paige looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the version of himself he didn't want the neighborhood to meet. "Why Nia?" he asked finally. "Why name her?" I slid the designation page over. Successor steward, Nia Elaine Mercer, effective at age 25. "Because she mows the grass when she visits," I said. "Because she asks what she can do instead of what she can get. Because Lorraine believes stewardship is a verb." Marisol closed her folder. "One more thing. If Leon chooses to spend time elsewhere, that's his right. The lease allows a caretaker arrangement approved by the trust, someone to check the house, water the hydrangeas, keep the pipes from complaining. What it does not allow is a basement apartment at your place with a door you control." Paige flinched like the word control had hit a tender spot. Marcus pushed back his chair. The scrape sounded like regret. "This isn't fair," he said. "Fair," I said. "Would have been grieving your mother before inventing a spreadsheet about my future." They left without slamming the door. Progress. Marisol leaned against the counter and exhaled. "How's your heart rate?" "Like a drumline," I said. "Good," she said. "Means you're alive. Now, about the Carolina plan." She flipped to a new page. "Lorraine asked me to coordinate a quiet place for you to breathe. Somewhere with neighbors who don't confuse kindness with ownership. Did you ever hear her talk about Port Mercy?" "Outer Banks?" I asked. Marisol smiled. "1 ferry, 2 diners, a bait shop, a library that still stamps cards. Lorraine set up a seasonal lease on a cottage there, nothing fancy. Shutters that know hurricanes by name. My throat tightened. She planned all that and still cooked Sunday dinner like nothing was happening. She planned because something was happening, Marisol said. That's love in a durable format. She slid me a key with a blue plastic tag, Sanderling Cottage. Go see the ocean, she said. Let the house be the house. The trust is a wall. You can stop being one. We drove east at dawn, just me in a suitcase, and Lorraine's absence sitting in the back seat like a quiet friend who had said everything she needed to say. Naya followed 2 days later. Last final exam turned in, duffel bag zipped like a decision. Port Mercy announced itself with salt on the air, and signs that warned you about the ferry schedule like it was a living thing. The cottage sat on a rise of stubborn sand with gray cedar shakes and blue storm shutters that could be thrown in 10 minutes if the sky changed its mind. A Sanderling footprint was pressed into the concrete step. Lorraine had circled it in the photo she mailed Marisol. This is the one, she'd written. Inside was honest, knotty pine walls, a crooked bookshelf, a small kitchen that believed in cast iron. A frame map of the inlet hung over the table. Toothpick flag stuck it, "You are here." In the first hour, 3 people appeared with a pie, jumper cables, and information. Alma Ricks, librarian and unofficial Port Mercy historian, handed me a peach pie. Lorraine called me before she passed, she said, no drama. Asked me to keep an eye on you if you ever made it down. I keep my promises. Captain Dwayne Keller, whose handshake was rope and weather, eyed my tires. Sand eats rubber, he said. Call me if you get stuck. He wrote his number on my palm with a Sharpie because paper goes missing, but phone numbers on skin feel like community. Mai Nguyen, who ran Soundside Bakery next to the tackle shop, pointed at my front steps. One board's soft, she said. I'll send my cousin to fix it this week. You pay him in coffee and a box of day-olds. He won't argue. That first night, I opened a drawer and found Lorraine's handwriting again, taped to the cutlery tray. Leon, if you found this cottage, then you found the thing I wanted most for you. Air. Breathe. Teach Nia how to keep what matters. Port Mercy will help. L. I sat in the chair by the small window and let the ocean say the same thing on repeat until I believed it. 2 days later, Nia arrived with sunblock, a spiral notebook, and eyes that had made a decision. I'm not here to rest, she said. I'm here to help. Help who? I asked. Whoever shows up before noon, she said, glancing toward the pier. And then the ones who show up. After. Alma clapped like a woman who loves a plan. Then you need to meet Elijah Park at the Soundside Justice Center. Pop-up legal aid. 3 staff, 20 problems a day. Housing, wage theft, storm claims, immigrants who speak better English than the forms do. We walked there after lunch. The center lived in a former bait warehouse with fans that churned the air and posters that translated rights into languages that didn't often get asked what they needed. Elijah looked like the older cousin who always shows up to move your couch. We take volunteers if they can take instruction, he said. Can you sit with folks and not fix them? Can you make a list without turning it into a sermon? Nia nodded. I can ask questions that don't feel like court. Good, Elijah said, because court is where we go when questions fail. He handed her a stack of intake forms and a smile that reached his eyes. Start with Mrs. Lattimore. Landlord says mold is just whether you can see. Let's teach him the phrase warranty of habitability. Nia spent 3 hours listening. She didn't interrupt. She didn't perform. She took notes that would make a judge understand what a cough sounds like at 2 a.m. That evening on the porch, she opened her notebook and showed me the rule set she'd built in the margin. Clinic rules. Nia's. Don't promise outcomes. Promise effort and clarity. Write down what people say first, then what you think about it. Translate law to human and human to law. Track costs, time, energy, and the favor you'll ask later. Celebrate small wins out loud. People need to hear the progress. Sounds like your grandmother, I said. Feels like my lane, she said. The cottage had a spare room. We made it an office. Alma brought a lamp that looked like it used to live in a school principal's den. Dwayne delivered a second-hand file cabinet that had weathered 2 storms and 1 divorce. Mai stocked our freezer with things that thaw into comfort. I called Marisol. The house okay? Caretaker checks Tuesdays, she said. Hydrangea's good. Mail forwarded. No cars loitering. Your children have gone quiet. Quiet like acceptance? I asked. Quiet like recalculating, she said. Let the trust carry that weight. You carry the ocean. By July, Nia knew more last names in Port Mercy than I did. She learned the bakery schedule and the ferry schedule, and which days Mr. Ortiz's back would keep him from picking up his prescriptions, unless someone called him a cab and told the driver he tips in good stories. At the Soundside Justice Center, the staff taught Nia their own rules. Never say simple paperwork, Elijah told her. If it was simple, they wouldn't be here. Never call it a loophole, said Rosa Delgado, paralegal who could scare a property manager into righteous behavior by reciting the citations in a slow voice. They hear cheat, code when we mean law. Never end a meeting without a next step, said Tariq, the clinic's one full-time attorney. Even if the step is, we'll call you Thursday. Uncertainty breaks people faster than bad news. Nia collected the rules and taped them above the shared desk. People started asking for her because she made them feel like their stories were maps, not mazes. One afternoon, a man named Jonas Pike came in with cap-in-hand humility and a problem that smelled like diesel and salt. Worked the shrimp boat 3 weeks, he said. Captain says cash flow's complicated. Promised to square up after the run. We grounded the day before payday. How much are you short? Nia asked. All of it. Wage theft doesn't always look like stealing. Sometimes it looks like delay. Do you have texts? Nia asked. He pulled out a flip phone and handed her a thread that read like non-committal kindness. She looked at Elijah. He nodded at the whiteboard. Nia wrote, Goal. Get Jonas paid. Why it matters. Rent due Friday. Constraints, no written contract. Captain says, we'll see. Tools, NC wage claim statute. Portmaster's informal leverage. Public docks permit rules. They walked to the docks with a copy of the harbor regulations. Elijah spoke to the portmaster, who didn't like captains who forgot wages. Can't tie up at my dock if you forget to pay your people, he said loudly enough for the wind to carry it. By sunset, Jonas had an envelope and a stunned gratitude that looked like disbelief easing its grip. That wasn't law, Jonas said to Nia. That was community with paperwork. It's often both, she said. Small win. They celebrated with sweet tea and a slice of Mai's blueberry pie on the clinic steps. Nia wrote paid in red on her whiteboard line. She circled it twice. A week later, a mother named Amaya Cabrera came in with 2 kids and a landlord who liked the phrase, fix it yourself. The kitchen ceiling had collapsed around the light fixture like a mouth. Can't do an electrician, the landlord had said. That's not in the budget. Rosa guided Nia through no self-help eviction, repair and deduct, and emergency injunctions. The law didn't have fireworks. It had steps. Steps work when you climb them. They filed a petition with photos. They called the inspector who had eaten 2 slices of Mai's pound cake during his last visit. He remembered generosity and returned it as diligence. The judge looked at the photos and at the kids sitting quietly coloring sharks with orange crayons because sometimes fear translates into bright colors. Order to repair, the judge said. 3 days. If you don't, I will. Nia didn't cheer in court. She waited until they were outside and then said, We're going to get this fixed. She looked at the kids. And we're going to get you new crayons that are not sharks unless you want them to be sharks. That night on the porch, she looked out at water the color of decisions. I want to do this for real, she said. Not as a nice summer story. I want to put my name on the work. What's the cost? I asked. She answered the way Lorraine once would have. Time, money, patience. I'll need a job to pay for classes. I'll need to study for the LSAT when the clinic closes. I'll need a thicker skin and a softer tone. What's the payoff? I asked. People sleeping without buckets under their ceilings, she said. Checks arriving when they're supposed to. Kids not learning that law is a thing that happens to them instead of for them. We made a plan like adults, community college for the credits she needed, a part-time job at the library where Alma would not let her hide from the world or her deadlines. Clinic hours 4 days a week. Sundays off unless a storm changed the math. I asked the question Lorraine would ask. How will we track progress? Nia drew boxes in her notebook. Promise. Apply to law school in 2 years. Progress. 1. 12 credits year with A's, or I reassess. 2. LSAT practice. 5. HR's DRS week. 3. 1 clinic case per week with a documented outcome. Pay off. Submit 3 applications with 2 strong letters and a portfolio of clinic work. Looks like stewardship, I said. It is, she said, of a life, not just land. A storm spun up in the Atlantic. Port Mercy watched the cone and picked up lawn chairs. We closed the shutters and taped the map down. Tasha called as the rain began. Her face on my screen looked tired in a new way. Clean tired, not the kind you get from always performing. Daddy, she said, I started therapy. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, because I was wrong. I didn't rush forgiveness at her. That's a gift you hand across a table after you've both eaten some truth. I'm listening, I said. She swallowed. I want permission to earn you back. Lightning cracked, polite and distant. Wind tested the shutters and decided they could stay. Call me next week, I said. Same time. We'll put it on the calendar. After we hung up, Nia and I sat with the storm. The cottage held. The phone stayed quiet. The ocean kept saying the same thing in different languages. Progress, not peace yet, but progress. Next morning, we found Dwayne stacking sandbags outside Mrs. Lattimore's duplex. Nia grabbed 2 at a time. He nodded approval like a man stamping an A on a paper without changing his face about it. Town meeting tonight, Alma told us. Budget for repairs, floodgate replacement. Folks will argue about whose water is whose. Bring patience. We did. People spoke until their throats got raw. Elijah translated confusion into options. Rosa handed out a 1-page explainer that would have made a senator jealous. When it was done, the board voted to fund the gate. Not because everyone agreed, because enough people wanted the town to work more than they wanted to win the room. Walking home under a sky that had forgiven us for the day, Nia said, "This is what Grandma meant, not running away, running toward." I looked at the dark line of the water and the lighter line of the future, and thought of a woman who had written instructions in the margins of my life and hidden them where I'd actually look. She meant doors, I said, not walls, and gates that swing the right way. The storm spent the night punching at Port Mercy and left in the morning like someone embarrassed by what they did at a party. The shutters held. The town held. The day after, the phone rang at 9 a.m. on purpose. Same time, like we said, Tasha said. Her voice had edges smoothed by effort rather than avoidance. I called to report progress, not to collect approval. Go on, I said. I met with Dr. Arlene Holloway twice a week, she said. We mapped when I started measuring people in dollars. I took a weekend shift at the grocery to start paying back what I claimed as mine. I wrote Naya a letter and included the first repayment. She can keep it or direct it. That's her call, not mine. Nia, sitting beside me at the little table with the inlet map, raised an eyebrow that said, "Keep listening." I want to visit, Tasha said. On your terms. I'll stay in a motel. I won't show up unannounced. If you say no, I'll try again in a month. Boundaries work when they cost something. It was costing her. Come next week, I said. 2 nights. We'll meet for coffee first. No money talk unless we bring it up. You ask about us before you tell us about you. I wrote those rules down, Tasha said. Thank you. She arrived on a Wednesday with an overnight bag and a face that had practiced humility in a mirror, then put the mirror away. She didn't step onto our porch until I opened the door and waved her up. Small obedience, big honor. At Soundside Bakery, Mai poured coffee like she'd been waiting to referee a gentle reunion. Naya slid into the booth last on purpose, the better to choose her distance. I took credit for a story that wasn't mine, Tasha said, no preamble. It felt good. Then it felt necessary. Then it felt like oxygen. I'm sorry. You taught me to thank the wrong people, Naya said. I had to unlearn that in public. I'll be okay being unthanked in public for a while, Tasha said. Not because I'm noble, because I'm trying to be accurate. We didn't run to hugging. We let the silence make room for the truth to sit. Out the window, Captain Dwayne backed his truck to the hydrant and started loading bottled water for Mrs. Lattimore's building. Nia watched. She always watches who lifts. Conditions, Naya said finally, steady but not cold. No narrative theft. If Granddad helps me, we say he helped me. If the clinic helps, we say they helped. No secret generosity. If you give, you say you gave and you accept the consequence. And no surprise campaigns. You don't call the trust, the clinic, or the town to fix us without asking first. Tasha nodded. I hear you. One more, Nia said. You don't use me as proof you're a good person. Tasha exhaled like an old tire finding new air. I hear that too. We took her to the Soundside Justice Center. Elijah put a volunteer badge in her hand and a stack of envelopes that needed stamps. You can start by sending people the letters that tell them their case exists, he said. It matters more than you think. For 3 hours, Tasha stuffed and sealed and put the right labels on fear. She didn't narrate how hard she was working. She worked. Before she left town, she handed Nia an envelope. Not cash. A printout. What's this? Nia asked. A deposit slip, Tasha said. I started a fund at the clinic in your grandmother's name, the Lorraine Mercer Hydrangea Fund, for emergency repairs that keep families from losing housing over one broken thing. I'll add to it each paycheck. If I stop for 2 months, you tell me. If I talk about it like it makes me a saint, you shut it down. Nia held the paper, reading the numbers the way you read a vow. Grandma liked hydrangeas, she said. She said they're honest. They change color depending on the soil, not the season. That sounds like her, Tasha said. And there it was, shared memory that didn't cost anyone else dignity. Tasha left town with 24 bagels from Mai for her co-workers and a list of books from Alma about how money behaves in families when nobody names it. She didn't ask to see the cottage. She didn't ask to open drawers. She called the next week, same time. Progress, not a parade. The quiet from Marcus and Paige didn't last. Quiet turned into the sound of something cracking where a camera couldn't catch it. In August, a certified letter arrived in the careful handwriting of the post office. Notice of HOA fine, Maple Crest. A list of small wrongs, grass an inch too high, trash cans too visible, a mailbox flag not within pallet. I called nobody. The trust didn't care about Maple Crest. 2 weeks later, a plain envelope arrived with my name written like someone was afraid to be recognized by his own letters. Inside, the spare key I'd asked for months ago, and a note, 7 words. I took too long. I'm sorry. M. I held the key like it was heavier than its metal. Because it was. I put it in a drawer we keep for things that once hurt and now remind. Next month, Marcus called on a number that showed up as unknown. I answered because unknown numbers have given me birthdays and funerals, and once a prize ham from a church raffle I never entered. Dad, he said without the brittle. You don't owe me a conversation. You called anyway, I said. I did, he said. Paige and I are separating. We built a life on other people's nods. When the nods stopped, the beams groaned. I'm sorry it hurts, I said, because I was. I can't fix what I did, he said. But I know how to move things from one place to another. Trucks, schedules, inventory. Captain Keller posted about storm prep. Could you give him my number or not? Your call. Dwayne will call you, I said. He has a way of deciding if a man's useful by how he lifts. Marcus came down 2 weeks later with 2 box trucks and a clipboard-free face. He didn't stop by the cottage. He didn't park under our windows. He moved water and tarps and diapers and generators with a steadiness that comes from doing one right thing for a long time. Rosa walked past him at the center and said, If you're here to help, keep helping. If you're here to be seen helping, we will see you out. He nodded. He stayed quiet. He kept lifting. On the 3rd day, he set a crate down and walked over to where Nia was explaining FEMA forms to a line of people that stretched to the vending machine. Excuse me, he said softly. Do you have a spare pen? She handed him one without looking up. Bring it back when you can, she said, just like she said to everybody else. He did. Small things first. The big things were too fragile to pick up yet. A week later, we hosted a potluck on the library lawn because storms go better through a body with food in it. Alma made a sign that said, Bring what you can, take what you need, and nobody tried to be clever about it. Tasha returned for a day, unasked but not uninvited, carrying casseroles from her building like an apology you can reheat. She didn't ask for photos. When Nia came by with a stack of flyers for a tenant rights workshop, Tasha picked up the stack and walked the row of tables, handing them out without commentary. At dusk, Elijah tapped a spoon on a mason jar. Neighbors, he said, next week we've got 2 meetings, one for predatory contractor avoidance. they're already circling. One for appeals on denied claims. Don't let your exhaustion become their business model. Nia squeezed my shoulder. Lorraine's quiet laugh seemed to rise with the crickets. Later that night, under the porch light that I still forget to turn off, Marcus stood at the foot of the steps with his hands in his pockets like a teenager who forgot how to ask for something. "I'm going to head back," he said. I wanted to say nothing, actually. I'll write when the right words arrive. I know better than to borrow yours. He turned to go, then paused and set something on the porch rail. The pen. Not just any pen. The blue one with a tiny scratch where Nia chews when the law gets naughty. She smiled despite herself. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, eyes on the boards. "You were clear," he said. "About the gate." "Keep being clear," she said. He left. Progress, not perfection. Lorraine used to say, "Most bridges are built out of small boards. Nobody drives an apology across a canyon in one go." 2 months passed. Tasha called every Wednesday, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 40. She didn't demand a grade. She reported what she'd done and what she'd failed to do. She missed 1 week and called the next day to say why and not make it a story. On a Saturday, she asked if she could visit again. Not to fill the cottage, to fill sandbags. "Come," I said. She did. She filled, lifted, passed, stacked. At noon, she took her lunch break like the rest of us and sat on the curb with Mrs. Lattimore's grandson, trading bites of PB&J for bite-sized explanations of how adults can be wrong and still be worth loving. "Does your mom ever get mad you help other people?" the boy asked. "She gets mad at how I used to help myself," Tasha said. "She gets proud at how I'm learning not to." He thought about that like it was a math problem with more than one right answer. "Okay," he said, satisfied, and ran off. Neighbors watch the way neighbors do when they're deciding how to refile you in their brains. Tasha didn't hurry their filing. She kept lifting until the stack matched the need. That night, she texted Nia a photo of a budget spreadsheet that labeled the hydrangea fund as a line item rather than a rounding error. She didn't ask for affirmation. She said, "Monthly, every 15th. If I miss, call me out." Nia heart reacted, then added, "No more basement suites." "Never again," Tasha replied. A small laugh came out of me without asking permission. Boundaries weren't walls. They were guardrails we finally agreed were there for everyone's sake. A year turned. Port Mercy marked it with a blessing of the fleet and a pie contest whose rules Alma enforces like a judge protects precedent. Nia baked with Mai and lost to Rosa on a technicality nobody minded because Rosa's crust tastes like she won an argument with butter and loved it enough to let it go. The Soundside Justice Center doubled its space when the bait shop owner sold them the back half for $1 and the story rights. The Hydrangea Fund kept 5 families from falling off the map when one bad plumbing day tried to erase them. Elijah hired a second attorney. Tariq finally took a week off and came back with a sunburn and a new way to explain retaliatory eviction to people who think the law only speaks landlord. Nia finished her credits at the community college with A's that looked earned instead of inevitable. She took the LSAT once, then again because the first score was fine and the second one felt like the work she'd actually done. She didn't do it alone. Alma quizzed her on logic games between patrons. Dwayne built a study desk out of driftwoods because he does not approve of flimsy studying. Rosa taught her to write a personal statement that didn't apologize for grief or brag about grit. Elijah wrote a letter that said more with 4 sentences than most men say in 4 holidays. We marked the day she clicked submit on 3 applications by carrying the laptop to the library porch and letting Alma ring the old brass bell that Port Mercy rings for good news and fires. "Whatever happens," Nia said, looking out at the inlet like it owed her nothing and she owed it attention, "I already became the person who could do this work." "That's the admission that counts," I said. A week later, Marcus mailed a flyer he'd made for the clinic. No logo splashed across the bottom, just clear blocks of information in English and Spanish about storm chaser contractor scams. Elijah taped it to the door without comment. Rosa shrugged like, "Fine, he can be useful." Paige moved to another city with a short name and a long list of water features. She sent a Christmas card with tasteful snowflakes and a sentence about new beginnings. We wished her well from a distance that felt healthy. Tasha kept showing up on Wednesdays, sometimes in person, sometimes on the line. She missed twice that year, both times with reasons and restitution. She sat on the back pew at the blessing of the fleet and cried as captains' names were read and tied off. Once, she came down with a man named Cal, who had kind eyes and didn't try to carry conversations that weren't his. She introduced him as someone trying to love me without fixing me. We liked him because he liked the town, before he knew the town liked him. Spring arrived wearing pollen like too much perfume. The hydrangeas woke up blue, then shifted to purple, then settled on a color that matched Lorraine's favorite Sunday dress. I trimmed them the way she taught me, no more, no less, and muttered something to the air about how I was doing my best. The air said, "Keep going." We got a letter in May with a triangle in the corner where a crest should be. Naya opened it with hands you use for both emergencies and holidays. She read. Then she handed it to me with a face that had already chosen humble. Admission, University of North Carolina, School of Law, fall entry, scholarship, award, partial, public interest, fellowship, eligible. We didn't shout. We stood up and let the news travel through our bones. Then we took the letter to the library and let Alma ring the bell until Dwayne came over to complain about the noise and hug us in the same motion. That night, Nia sat on the porch with her notebook and filled in the boxes she'd drawn a year ago. Promise, apply to law school, progress, credits done, LSAT done, clinic portfolio alive, payoff, admitted, fellowship path, open, work continues. She drew a new set, promise, 2.0, graduate, pass the bar, return to the coast. Progress, summers at the clinic, clinics at UNC, keep hydrangea fund growing. Payoff, found Raven and Sound, legal collective within 5 years, teach others to hold their own rights with both hands. I laughed and then pretended the laugh was a cough because men get shy when Joy shows up without warning. Lorraine never did. She treated Joy like a guest you'd been expecting. We drove to Chapel Hill to find an apartment with windows that knew trees. Marisol reviewed the lease like she was sharpening a knife and found 3 clauses that needed changing. The landlord blinked at how politely we refused to be naive and changed them. In August, we moved Nia in. We used Dwayne's truck and Alma's labels and Mai's muffins and the number Marcus had taped to the side of a box. If lost, call me. He drove the second trip. He didn't give advice. He asked where a lamp should go and put it there. We left a folded quilt on Nia's bed. Lorraine's hands were in that quilt, which means they were in that room, which means the room had more safety than the lock could guarantee. On the drive back to Port Mercy, I felt something I hadn't respected enough when I was young. Satisfaction that doesn't need applause. I drove with the windows down and let the state we love name itself through the windshield. Pines, billboards for fireworks and peaches. A sky that thinks clouds are a kind of joke. At home, the cottage smelled like wood and ocean and clean pages. On the table sat a note in Alma's tidy script. Leon, town council asked if you'll serve on the Raven Hollow Steward Board as a mentor to new elders placing homes in the trust. They need someone who can explain fences without making people feel fenced in. No pressure, yes, would be nice. I said yes. At the first meeting, I didn't talk about law. I talked about gates. Trusts don't lock you in, I said. They lock danger out. They keep a house from becoming food for someone's fear. They teach children that inheritance, if it comes, is a responsibility, not a jackpot. A man raised his hand and asked, "What if my boy gets mad?" "He might," I said. "Mad is what people get when the gravy boat runs dry. Let him be mad at your fence if it keeps him from being mad at himself later." He wrote that down like a man writing a recipe his grandmother never measured. In November, Nia called at midnight from the law library. "Granddad," she whispered, "the professor said my argument was clean." You'd have thought she'd said she found a cure for rust. I told her I was proud a dozen ways that didn't sound like a speech. A week after that, Marcus sent a photo without a caption, a stack of tenant rights pamphlets on a table at a resource fair where his company had donated water and not required anyone to pose. The angle of the photo told me he knew he didn't need to be in it. December tipped in. The town lit a tree that looked small from the road and enormous if you stand under it and look up. Tasha came with Cal and 2 pies she bought because she has not yet learned crust, and that's fine. We let Rose's crust win. Again. Tradition matters. We ate on paper plates. We washed the good ones. We argued about the right way to string lights and the right way to say sorry and the right way to hold a grudge until it becomes a boundary. We didn't solve everything. We solved enough to sing. When the evening thinned and people headed home to their drafts and dogs and shows, Nia called from Chapel Hill. "Put me on speaker," she said. I did. She told the town good news about grades and money and a professor who thinks she'll do well in housing law. Someone cheered so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I stood on the porch steps where the pen had once sat and thought about a life that had refused to be turned into the smallest possible version of itself. Lorraine had called it a Carolina plan. Turns out it wasn't about the coast or the cottage. It was about a framework, promise, progress, payoff, over and over, until a family learns to be a family again, or learns to leave each other alone with respect. I picked up the bell Alma left with us for emergencies and good news, and rang it once, soft. The sound carried just far enough. "Folks," I said to you, to whoever is watching from wherever you are, there's a difference between a family that owns you and a family that frees you. Choose the one that builds your backbone, not the one that bends it. Port Mercy breathed. The hydrangeas slept. The ocean said the same prayer it's been saying since the first ferry learned the route. And in a brick house in Jackson that now sits on land, nobody can sell for a story. A blue folder in a drawer held everything we'd needed all along, a plan, a key, and a woman's handwriting, telling us to be bigger than the people who would cut us small. Before you go, tell me where you're watching from. If this helped you choose a gate that swings the right way, hit like. And share this with someone who thinks control is love. Sometimes a good fence is the kindest truth.